Hey guys, Edre here, and today I'm going to be doing a new album review, one that I have been looking forward to and am very excited about because, to be fair, they've been pretty active and pretty good this year. I am, of course, reviewing the brand new BTS album, B. Now, I don't think BTS needs much of an introduction at this point. They are a K-pop Korean band that is enormously popular here in the States and around the entire world. And Map of the Soul 7, their album which came out earlier this year, I give a 9 out of 10. It is still one of my favorite albums that came out this year, and I just love the way they really pushed the boundaries of K-pop and of what the expectations of the genre and of them were. A lot of people kind of went into that, me included, having a general idea of what I thought BTS was, and being very impressed by the result. And while that album was very long, nearly 20 tracks long, there wasn't that much filler on it. Almost all of the tracks were very unique from each other, and all stood out from each other, while still leaving a lasting impact. And go back a little bit more to Love Yourself and some of that stuff, other projects I enjoy, I really like those projects as well. However, they didn't leave as big of an impact as, say, Map of the Soul 7 did. So going into this album, first off, it was a surprise, and it was, when I looked at the track list, it's significantly shorter than 20 songs. It's only 8 songs long, and one of them is essentially a skit. So, some people say this is an EP, some people say it's an album. I say it's an album, because that's what it seems to be classified as on Wikipedia. And I gotta say, going into it, I was really hyped up. I was very excited because, quite frankly, I did really enjoy a lot of the material they have put out this year with Map of the Soul 7. And I kind of was reading a bit up on this album, and it seems to have come about due to the shutdown. A lot of the coronavirus shutdown did mess up a lot of their plans because Map of the Soul 7 did come out before coronavirus, all that craziness. So they kind of ended up putting this album together, hence why it's probably shorter. So let me get into the actual music of this album. Musically, it is definitely a bit more diverse in terms of overall musical style, with the opening track, Life Goes On, featuring a much more natural and a much more acoustic instrumentation. Definitely a change in sound compared to the more hip-hop and trap-oriented sounds of a lot of the songs on Map of the Soul. And I really think the group goes even heavier on the acoustic side of things on the acoustic track, the acoustic lo-fi track, Blue and Gray. Not only is it acoustic, but it does have a very lo-fi beat, which I thought was kind of funky and cool. And overall, I think Blue and Gray is one of the highlights on this album. I really do like the way they really dive deep into that acoustic sound, that acoustic elements. They really do execute it quite well. And one of the overall trends, though, besides the acoustic sounds that appear on this album that I picked up on, was that despite them being a K-pop group, their overall tone on this album seems to be much more pop-oriented and much more pop-friendly than a lot of their previous projects. And even though they are a pop group, they have dived a lot into hip-hop in the past, and I don't find that as much on this album. They seem to go a much more accessible, pop-friendly route, and I don't think any track really displays this more than the closing track and hit single Dynamite, which is undeniably a pretty solid pop banger and is a huge song that I really kind of enjoy, and I think one of the highlights on this entire album. But aside from the acoustic elements and the more pop-friendly elements, there seems to be a bit more of an R&B and soulful tone on this album as well, on tracks like Fly to My Room and Telepathy, or Telepathy, I'm kind of stupid, with elements of jazz organs being present on the song Fly to My Room, as well as the song Telepathy having a really fat and thick groove, which really does drive that song home. Overall, I was left relatively satisfied with the instrumentation. However, I will say my one major flaw is that none of the actual melodies and songs like that, unfortunately, they aren't that memorable. And that's a big problem for me because I really like the musical style, I really like the musical compositions and arrangements, but the actual melodies and songs themselves oftentimes leave me kind of wanting more. I don't feel like the actual melodies are that memorable, especially compared to a lot of the tracks on their previous album, which is a bit disappointing. Even though I really enjoyed the overall sound of it, it was the songs themselves, the song cores, where I felt that at the core of the songs, the the most memorable, unfortunately. And vocally, BTS really has a pretty expected delivery on this album, kind of what I was expecting. The perfect example is a song like Stay, which is a solid track that is well executed, but doesn't really seem to do anything more than what I already kind of expected from them, unfortunately. And that is a kind of a negative, because on Map of the Soul 7, they really did kind of blow my expectations away on several tracks, such as Ugh, which with an excellent rap delivery, one of the best rapping songs I've heard all year. Or on the song Interlude Shadow, which is one of the most emotionally heart-wrenching songs I think in their entire career. Or if it's on the song Boy With Love featuring Halsey, which is an excellent pop banger. Unfortunately, a lot of the songs on this album, B, don't really do that for me. They don't leave that lasting impact that I was looking forward to. They sort of just play by the books, they play to their strengths, but never really go much further. However, I will say vocally, they do get a bit more immersive and a bit more emotional and softer on the acoustic track Blue and Gray, which, like I said, is one of the highlights for me. It's a very well-crafted song, and I also really just think that vocally they're very strong on that song. There's a lot of emotion and passion in that track, so I will say there are a few tracks here and there where I do think they put their all into it and really do go above and beyond. But, unfortunately, at the end of the day, I know this is a bit of a shorter review, but it is a bit of a shorter album. Unfortunately, they kind of stay within their comfort zone on this album. It's definitely not as risky as its predecessor, and unfortunately, that does drag this album down a little bit, because I was looking forward to them taking more risks, and unfortunately, it looks like they played it a bit safe. However, that being said, don't take that the wrong way. Even though they do play it safe on this album, they play it safe very well. Even though they play to their strengths, they still execute almost each and every track very good here. None of the tracks seem to be half-assed or kind of just thrown together. They all seem to have reason behind them, and they all seem to be executed relatively well. I wasn't left being extremely disappointed. My only complaint really was that I just wish it was a bit more risky and a bit more on par with their predecessor. But unfortunately that didn't happen, but the songs themselves were still well executed and fine tracks. Just because it doesn't break new territory for the band doesn't mean that it's necessarily bad or you should avoid it. I think overall, especially a song like Dynamite, which is definitely a great pop banger, is a great song everybody should check out, even if it's not breaking new grounds or new territory for their music. At the end of the day, I was left relatively satisfied. It didn't go above and beyond my expectations, unfortunately, but they did kind of what I wanted them to do. They didn't go above and beyond, but they didn't really fail to make a good album. So at the end of the day, I've settled on giving this project a strong 7 out of 10, which is a positive review. It's not my most positive review, and it doesn't make my Edre's Picks playlist, but a 7 out of 10 is a good review. Anything above a 5 is good, anything below a 5 is negative. And while it's not as good as the 9 out of 10 that I gave Map of the Soul 7, I do think that B it's definitely a good treat in this dark time, and I do look forward to seeing what they do next. They don't necessarily break new grounds or explore anything too crazy on this project, which is why I, unfortunately, had to give it a 7 and not anything higher. But a 7 is still a good review. I still enjoyed it. I still had a lot of fun listening to it, and I still look forward to seeing what BTS does in the future. That is it for now. BTS, B, 7 out of 10, and a strong 7 out of 10.